Do you read me?
Be advised, you are coming in weak and unreadable.
Say again, Comm Tower. This is Pacho. Do you read me?
Pacho, this is Comm Tower. I read you Lima Charlie.
Comm Tower. Request permission to launch and commence the field op. Over.
Stand by. Pacho, permission granted. I say again, permission granted.
Roger that. Launching podcast in 3, 2. You are now entering the field op with your host, Pacho Correa, Chief Warrant Officer 3, United States Marine Corps retired. Get some. Hurrah! Get some, hurrah! What's going on, everybody? Baby Friday is here. Friday night's Eve. Goddamn, it's almost the weekend. Well, for most of us, it is. For those of us who are still on the grind and hustling and doing the 1099 thing, it's day on, stay on, baby, like we used to be in the Marine Corps. Hey, we got a really cool show today. Reconnected was amazing individual as one of our fellow warrant officers likes to call him. He's an amazing human being, Scotty Bolman. And but before we get started on the show, let's do the do and get all the pleasantries out of the way. Hey, look, this show is brought to you by, I guess, me and the rest of the team of what we do here. Hey, when was the last time you went and looked at your finances and really got organized to make sure that not only you're on your target to pay off all your debt, pay off your home, not within 30 years from, like the bank wants you to do, but maybe within the next 10, maybe even less years. Well, if you give us a call, we'll go ahead and we can set up just a conversation and get you pointed in the right direction. We can give you a free financial needs analysis. And that way, we just paint a picture as to where you stand financially. Are you on track? Are you saving properly? Are you investing? Are you making that VA claim benefit money work for you? Because at the end of the day, when it comes to retiring, it's not an age, it's an actual financial figure. Now, it all depends on where you fall on that as well. But, the last thing you want to do, even as retirees as well as veterans who are 100% and whatever the case, we don't have the right education when it comes financially, and we mismanage our money, and the last thing you want to do is find yourself in your late 60s, 70s, back at work, greeting people at Walmart because your lifestyle or your income that can't keep up with you, or worst case scenario, you outlive your income. So give us a call. No, just a conversation, no pressure, no commitment, no nothing. We can make that happen, and then we can go from there. The other great thing is also, when was the last time you looked at your claims and benefits, and to make sure that you are receiving everything that you deserve, or that you worked hard for, or that you gave your body, mind, soul, and spirit from the VA. Well, I can also help you with that. What I do is I help veterans, look into their case, and I teach you how to fish, how to go over your claim and benefit. I even teach you how to use AI to, put a file of claim together. I also have the resources and friends who are retired VSOs, among other things, to help you, get what you need and deserve, so that you get, the right compensation, as well as be taken care of for it at the VA. Because as we get older, it's just, as my mom would like to say, age doesn't come by itself. It always brings friends like, joint issues, back issues, and everything else. So you just want to make sure that you were taken care of. All right. So if that's something that you want to get into as well, I'd be more than glad. Drop me a line, drop me a DM on all my social media platforms. And if you want to get into start doing your own podcast, or just you want to do things that marketing or whatever else the case, get with Brian Colburn from Sitchradio.com. They'll be more than glad to help you out and get you going. He's an amazing life coach, among other things. The dude is like Yoda. And he has helped me out on more wins than one, and point me in the right direction to where I am today. So Sitchradio.com, check out some of their shows. If you like this show, like, subscribe, and follow. Help me out on the other analytics on my other platforms on YouTube, as well as TikTok and Facebook. All right. So, and if you like this show, hey, in this show, we're all about the right to bear arms, the Constitution, all that good stuff and freedom of speech. So, we can agree to disagree. If you don't like me, that's okay. But if you like me, go ahead and stick around and let's excuse me, let's have a conversation. So, hey, I think that's all pretty much with the pleasantries. Hey, this man right here. I used to be a recruiter, and the last thing at our office we wouldn't allow any kid to do is go open contract. But my man Scott Bolman, he went open contract, and he ended up being working at the Brig and did amazing things. He made it. This dude is a true unicorn. What do we call a true unicorn in our field? Is that he made it all the way to CW5, whereas I just made it to 3. So my man was not only good at skating, but he was also good about telling unrestricted offers to go fuck themselves. So with that being said, let's bring Scott Bolman, everybody. What's going on, brother?
Not too much. Thanks for the introduction.
Hey, man, what a lot of people don't know is, well, I think I put a little bit on the show description, is that you and me went to the basic school together. But before we get even into all that, why don't you give everybody just who you are, right quick, where you serve, just a quick synopsis of who Scotty Bolman is.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Marine Corps for quite a while, about 31 years. Came in, enlisted, worked at the Camp Lejeune Brig, and I was hoping to end at the Camp Lejeune Brig, but that didn't get to happen. Now currently out of the Marine Corps, and I'm not actually. I know that the title said I was running the South Carolina Department of Corrections, but I'm not running the South Carolina Department of Corrections. I manage the inspections for all the jails and the prisons, but I manage the inspection program for the whole state. So I got
okay. So let me ask you this. So I mean, I got some just some kind of notes to kind of keep us on track and everything. But what was your first impression? So here you are. You went through MOS school, and I'm sure some of these, because I know in Motor T school, you got the instructor to give you all these C stories like, oh, you're gonna do this, you're gonna do that. But seriously, so as soon as you left, you hit the fleet. What was it like to your first couple of months as as a boot, working at the Brig? Was that like a culture shock to you? What was that like?
Well, first of all, I don't think there's a guy I know that knows that joined knowing he was going to go into corrections. He was working, and he knew New Mexico was only paying like $19,000 a year. So he offered him a job doing corrections in the Marine Corps, and he jumped out. And he ended up retiring out of the Marine Corps too, but nobody else ever decides they want to be in the Marine.
Right.
And it was a shock. The first time those gates closed behind, whoa, here we go.
Okay. You still there? I wonder.
I'm still here. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I just there's been a little bit of thunderstorms here, so internet has been kind of lagging. But hey, we'll just make it happen. So, what was some so when you were doing this whole thing in your first couple of years? I mean, what was some of your wildest or things that you saw inmates do? I mean, I'm pretty sure I know that there's different ranks and stuff, because I was a chaser for a little bit. Not to compare myself to what you did, but I know some of these people, it's like they retract to being like PFCs or privates, right?
Really matter. We had, in there, we were at the Camp Lejeune Brig as well, but it wasn't for AWOL, it was for 112.
Really?
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Okay.
That music came out. Everybody was like, man, that dude was in the Brig, so it was. It's in the Marine Corps, do it. There's nothing that happened. Craziness, people locked up for doing some wild things.
No, I bet. I think I think we're having a little bit of a lag with 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 some of your responses, but that's okay.
Here.
From you helped design and staff Camp X-Ray. What was that process like, bro?
Man, this is breaking up pretty bad.
Yeah. Do you got a couple of tabs open on your computer?
I couldn't hear the question on Camp X-Ray. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, it's on my computer. I'm going to kick over.
Yeah, if you got a couple of tabs open on your computer,
Let me kick over to my phone.
Okay.
Let me go back to that.
It's all good. We can while you get situated and hit that jump from your computer to your phone. I just tell everybody some of our stories hanging out at TBS.
Okay. See if we can do it this way.
There you go. I think that's a lot better.
Okay, let me do this here. All right.
All right.
Let me see. Leave from this one here.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot better. It's not breaking up as bad as it was before.
Let me see if I can. Okay.
Is that better?
Let's see if this works.
Yeah, that's a lot better.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, I can hear you now. Might want to turn on your camera, I think.
Okay, let me turn. All right. There we go. Is that better?
Just to show, yeah.
Is that better?
Yeah, on the sound it is. But
yeah, the picture's terrible, but I'm ugly anyway, so that isn't going to matter.
Yeah, it's hey, we'll make it happen. So you got to you help design and staff Camp X-Ray. Is that in Gitmo? Is that correct?
What is it doing?
Scott, can you hear me? Oh man.
Yes.
Can you hear me now? Oh, he's gone. Well, hey, sometimes technology is not as reliable as we would like it to be, everybody. I will say that Scott Bolman got to be a couple of times. So we were going through TBS, and as a matter of fact, he was our, in our platoon, he got to be, the platoon leader for a couple of times. I can tell you this, that out of all the other guys and gals that were part of, that got to do that, it was, obviously he was a very level-headed and kind individual. So what Daryl Scubina said about him is 100% true. I mean, Scott Bowman, very mild-headed. I think I got to be in front of the class. I think we all get a chance to do it. I don't remember how I did, but at TBS you have these things called peer evals, or as we like to call them, spear evals, and it's not the best because it's like everybody's pretty much. That's when everybody's what do you call it? True character comes out. Hey, there he is.
Wow, I had to turn off my internet completely to do it, so hopefully you can hear me now.
Yeah, no, this is perfect.
Okay.
All right, so we'll start once again. So, so you came in open contract and you ended up going into corrections. Is that correct?
Yes.
Man, why would you do that? I mean, in our office, we weren't allowed to write any open contracts.
Oh no, it's doing it again. Hold on a second. I don't know why I'm getting an echo here. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. So no, nobody wanted to go into corrections. It wasn't a thing that, you ever choose to do. It just ends up choosing you. Yeah, my dad was a Marine. I had to call my dad and be like, "Hey Dad, what's corrections?" He's like, "Oh, you're going to be one of those assholes." And I was like, "Oh shit." Oh. So my dad did a couple tours in the Brig.
As a tenant or as a?
Oh no, as a
guest,
non-wanting to be the guest. Yeah.
Nice. That's awesome. So what I was asking earlier is that you helped design and staff Camp X-Ray up at Gitmo.
Yeah, that was crazy. There was, at the time, we had just stood up a deployable unit, the first corrections guys to be deployable, back in right before 9/11. Then 9/11 hit. We were on air alert with 2nd MP Battalion. We always thought we were going to Afghanistan. They got us on the airplane with Miami Air. There's like 1,500 Marines flying on like 6 different planes from Cherry Point. And once we got in the air, they're like, "Where's our corrections guys?" So we put our little dick skinners in the air and say, "Hey, we're right here." They're like, "Oh, you guys are going to build a prison. So we need you to sit up front and come up here. You guys are going to do this, 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 and this." And we had like 2 weeks to get the place built, train an Army battalion how to do it, and then supervise them doing it until they quit listening to us.
Wow.
It was crazy. You're one day you're sitting at Camp Lejeune, and the next day Donald Rumsfeld's walking into your little camp down there at 2:00 in the morning to see what's going on. And it was just complete shock. And then all the emotions were pretty high too, because it was only like 3 months after the towers fell. So yeah, everybody was kind of crazy.
Wow. And so did you get to see and house and experience, all those folks that they brought, those enemy combatants from pretty much all over the Middle East? What was that like?
So it was really crazy. I had a buddy of mine was with 3-6, and he was in Kandahar, and he was writing notes on the back of prisoner uniforms. So we'd get the guy, and I'd get a note from my buddy Toby, and we had to send the uniforms back and forth because we didn't have enough uniforms for everybody. So I could send messages back and forth to him. But we had everybody there we processed Sheikh Khalid Mohammed, David Hicks from Australia, a bunch of British guys. Like, there were people all over the world that were in Afghanistan working on chemical stuff and all kinds of training things for the Taliban. And we had people from every country down there. You had no idea who could speak English, who couldn't. Sheikh Khalid Mohammed speaks pretty good English once he takes a fall. He asked for Tylenol. It was nuts. It was really surreal. It really was.
Did it change your perception, I guess, or how you viewed, I guess, your role in the detention field as a whole, having that different, being exposed to those different environments?
At that point, that's when I kind of realized, like, there's so much more that corrections could actually do just because of the experiences we have. The Marine Corps never uses us like they should, and half of that's our own fault, because there's a saying in the military police field, that you're either a good MP or you're a good Marine. You can't be both. And it's kind of true. And in corrections, it's kind of the same way. Half the people in corrections, they all wanted to get their little check in the box to go deploy, and then, come back and sit on their ass in the Brig and not do anything. And they didn't want to come out of their comfort zone. So if you deployed them, the only thing they knew how to do, they couldn't think about being a Marine. They would just be like, well, if it's not corrections, I'm not doing it. Or even though I know how to do that, it's not, putting an inmate in a cell and checking a box and drinking coffee while sitting on my ass watching him, go to the bathroom. So I didn't want to have anything to do with that. I wanted to get out in the field and go do and see what we could actually, get accomplished as corrections. I did it the rest of the career that way.
Wow. Again, as I mentioned earlier, I my short experience was as a chaser, and we took in a sergeant or was a staff sergeant. This is we're talking in the early 90s. I was a lance corporal, so we had to take because I had a chaser card, and remember, it's just a 1 day, not even a day course. Yeah. You just go in there and it just, whatever. And then one day out of nowhere, after I did flush with all that, with that class, they're like, hey, the other guy's not here. You got to go. We got to chase this dude and take him to the brig. I'm like, what the? So, we thank God that the guy that I was with had done it before. But I mean, literally, I mean, these lance corporals and PFCs that work at the brig, I mean, they're not berating the individual, but I mean, they're like speaking like, hey, you will remove blah 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 blah. I mean, it's I PFC, I lance corporal,
There was probably some berating back in the early 90s, because I used to work in Gate 2, and we always had a saying, if the towers were out there on the backside of the building, and if the towers couldn't hear you in processing an inmate, you weren't doing it right. We had rules like, you're sitting out there in the gate, like, your watch supervisor, the WS that's running receiving and release, would come out and say, hey, if that bitch doesn't cry, he's not coming in here, so you better break him down. We just did it. It was one of those things that, it was a different world in the early 90s.
Yeah, I mean, and again, you and me came in, when hazing was amazing. That was the whole,
it's an integral part of close unit leadership.
Yeah. Hey, what do you want? Pain or paper? Fuck, I'll take pain any day.
I'll take pain. Yep, give me pain. Yeah, the brig. Yeah. We had the 4 horsemen at the brig. And I'm pretty sure there was multiple people that wasn't just 4 Marines, but if you screwed up on post, I fell asleep on post one day in the middle of the day while doing my in processing. We were still in class, and I had to go relieve post for lunch, and I fell asleep, and the security officer got my keys. She walked right up on post, got my keys, and my watch supervisor came up and asked me to open a gate. I woke up and tried to pull the keys out to open the gate, and I didn't have them. And then the next thing I hear is like, go down to the security officer's office. I wait down there. Security officer's like, I should write you up, but your corporal wants to take care of it. Are you willing to let him take care of it? And here, I'd been in the Marine Corps for about 7 months. I was like, of course, like, let him take care of it. So he takes me down the hallway to receiving and release. And on the right-hand side, we had all the uniforms down there when you came in the glass doors at the old brig.
Yeah.
And they called it the Star Chamber. I walked inside that door. They locked the door behind me and beat the ever-living shit out of me. And I saw stars. I came back out of there and walked into the security officer's office with a black eye and a fat lip. And she's like, are you ever going to fall asleep on post again? I was, no, ma'am.
I remember one, I forgot, in the motor pool. So I left my toolbox unlocked, and, obviously the floor chief, that was like one of his pet peeves, and some of my tools were fucking missing. And I take this thing to the tool room, and I put, because you had to push him into the tool room. Well, as soon as I pushed in, the door closed behind me, and they're like, hey, you looking for your... I was like, oh, fuck. I walked out of there much, pretty fucked up and rolled. But that was the last time I always have my key with me. Basically, I never lost that shit.
I was deathly afraid of falling asleep on post again. We used to do some other, like, I used to do some pretty sick shit to people that would fall asleep on post too. So, in the middle of the night, you got to count inmates, and you're sitting inside a squad bay. You're locked in there with an open squad bay with like 60 inmates, and you fall asleep at the desk. I used to put on an inmate uniform, and my sleeves, I'd have this long sleeves down. You'd see the orange. I'd walk up behind them, tap them in the back of the head just so they wake up and see the orange right as I put them in a chokehold and choke them the fuck out. Some of those guys used to piss their pants because they thought they were being killed. They thought it was an inmate. Yeah.
Not like this. Not like this.
I don't know. And you're like, or you go in the fire escape and low crawl from the back to the front. And if they didn't catch you before you got to their desk, you just beat the ever living hell out of them. But, and, honestly, I think if the Marine Corps, if we could have controlled it somehow, I think 8th and I was the place that it really screwed us. Those guys were doing some really sick shit. And I think that was when they decided they were going to crack down on it, because it was great. Like you were so loyal to your unit, and now you don't really see that as much. And I think half the Marine Corps would like it to be that way again. Even the youngsters.
When I got out, so I'm a retread. I got out and I came back in, dude. And I ended up at Truck Company, and that's where I met Scott Gilman when he was still a staff sergeant before he became a 5. all these cats, and another guy's been on the show before, Kevin Franham. And dude, I think out of all the units, that was the epitome. It was so much being a fun, because I pinned on corporal, sergeant, at that unit, and it was the epitome for me because, dude, we had a lot of fun. We worked hard, but there was a lot of shit like that. Hey, paint or paper? Fuck, I'll take paint stabs. I mean, Roger, sergeant, corporal, whatever.
Yeah.
Roger that. Hey, here's a canteen. You see, Margarita Hill. You see that hill?
Yeah.
Go water the flower over there 3 times, and clock is ticking. I mean, or you would go do tailgate PMs on the 5 tons. Remember the 5 tons?
Yeah.
Fucking heavy ass tailgates, dude.
Yeah.
That type of shit. So when you were when you were in Iraq and Afghanistan, you did route clearance and MSR security. I mean, what was that shit like for you, bro?
We did the first. It was crazy when I first got there for the push up into Iraq. I was being a corrections guy. I was the only corrections guy that was really a platoon sergeant. The other guys that were staff NCOs that were corrections, I was a young staff sergeant. The staff NCOs that were corrections. They stayed back in Kuwait. But the MPs, since I had a platoon, they put every single female in the battalion, like in my platoon. And then they sent me down to the port thinking that we were going to be stuck at the port because they didn't know if they were going to allow females to cross the LOD originally. There was a lot of talk about like allowing them to go. So they stuck them all with me. And then we ended up getting stuck with Task Force Tarawa, and we went up to we went into Iraq. And when we came back, that was crazy. And then, and I had females with, that were getting combat action. We had a lot of guys in the rear that were still at, Camp Fox that never even went into Iraq. And then the second time we went over with a Pendleton unit. I was at Lejeune, but we went over with CSSB 1 and RCT 1, and we split up as a company into 4 different locations. One company one platoon went to Al Assad, 2 of us went to TQ, and 1 went to Fallujah. But those of us that were at TQ, we drove back and forth between TQ, Ramadi, and Fallujah. And then our company and our platoon in Fallujah did the same thing. But every morning it would be like, okay, you're drawing straws to see which people you get to escort, and second TSB was out there too. Their call sign was Driftwood, believe it or not. And and they had this lieutenant. The lieutenant's name was Stoner. I mean, you couldn't make this shit up if you didn't. And every time we'd go out with those guys, it was like, oh fuck, man. Like the MPs, we would always bitch because the truck drivers would just drive like they're not following the route. We only had 8 gun trucks for like 50 vehicles. And these idiots would, drive right past the turn they're supposed to make. They're driving straight into downtown Ramadi by themselves. And we had to turn around and go chase cats. And it was nuts. And, shit, before we even left that deployment, they busted like 15 to 20 of them with weed down in Kuwait. They were all smoking pot on the convoys. And we smelt it and told them. And then they had to bring the dogs down. So we take the dogs into their billeting area. We didn't have any drug dogs. They were all bomb dogs. But their battalion commander told them that we're going to bring the drug dogs through it. If they confessed ahead of time, the punishment wouldn't be as bad. So like 10 of these idiots stepped forward, with their weed. And then we walk the dogs through. The dogs don't hit on anything because we're looking for, they can't even smell drugs. That type of shit was like, it was nuts.
Dude, I think we might have crossed paths because I went in 2003 during the push. We were there. And so we took a 4th LAR. We were part of the INI staff, and this is the first time we stood up, an entire reserve battalion.
Right.
So,
the reserve MPs actually attached to division. Like our whole battalion was put under at the time it was FSSG, which was the worst mistake the Marine Corps could have ever made. Like that was the dumbest idea ever, is to give FSSG all of the MPs.
Yeah, Field Service Support Group. I was part of first FSSG, when I first came in the Marine Corps, and then remember First Shrig and all that shit.
Yeah, First Shrig and
Oh Jesus Christ! Hey, so let me ask you this. So, what made you? At what point did you decide kind of coming full circles. At what point did you decide, fuck, you know what? I think I want to be a warrant officer.
Oh God. So part of it was I was in Pendleton. I had just I was coming into zone for gunny, and I felt like I was taking too long to get to gunny, and I really didn't want to do it. And we had I want to say an inspection team from headquarters Marine Corps was coming out to Pendleton, and they'd come in, and a guy named Strobel, Greg Strobel, he actually ended up finishing and retiring he was the head director of all of Army Corrections as a retired CWO5. But Greg was like trying to talk me into becoming a warrant officer. And I said, look, I don't want to do it. I'm going to lap move and go back right to, I had a lap move package in to go to be a field MP as an 11, and it got approved. So I'm like, I'm leaving.
Yeah.
Like, I'm gone. I'm going back to do what I want to do. I'm going back to Iraq. My wife wasn't happy about it because I'd already done the tours over there. And so he called my wife and said, hey, look, like, here's what a sergeant major makes in retirement. Here's what a warrant officer CWO5 makes in retirement. And my wife had been in the Navy, and I kept her knocked up so she couldn't deploy. And so she had to, she couldn't get promoted. So she had to get out at higher tenure. So she's kind of like, hey, it's time to put in a warrant officer package, dumbass. And I actually called another guy that ended up becoming a 5-2, Joe Moschetto. I called Joe, and I'm like, dude, should I do it? And he's like, fuck no, Scott. If you want to really know, he's like, this sucks. Like, you're stuck behind a desk, bro. And he's like, but like, what else are you going to do? You're going to let the other idiots get selected? We had a guy that got selected the year before that just was complete trash. And I'm like, oh man, yeah, it's either be the idiot or work for the idiot. I'm like, okay. I didn't think it was going to happen. I think there were like 32 packages submitted that year.
I forget how many, I think in my field, there were like 5. I was one, I think it was like 5 or 6 that got selected. And I was one of them. And, when you and me were there, I mean, you remember fucking TBS, dog. I mean, we had, remember Reinhold? I mean, this dude, I think he was 47, but he was like, he was 80, could barely fucking run,
Yeah. Oh,
and
yeah.
You're like, no shit. That's why they changed the year before, they fucking started changing everything.
Oh, well, the year before us, from what I was like, I'd found out talking to people later on, is there was like a 30% PFT failure that year. So those guys showed up, and like the majority of them failed the PFT, and they'd already been promoted, so they couldn't get rid of them. So they just put them on like BCP and shit at TBS to get them through because they'd already been promoted at their unit. Because our company was the first one to go through and report as enlisted. Because we stuck all of. I think they probably still have the board at TBS. I'm gonna have to check it this next year when my youngest one goes. I'm gonna have to check and see if they've got it in the bar, because they kept all those like the drawers with all the rank insignia and all that shit in the bar. The bar shut down now.
The Hawk is gone. Yeah.
The Hawks moved, but I think they still have that plate in there. We'll have our names on that with like all of our enlisted rank insignia that we pushed into that ceiling tile in front of Letty at the bar.
Oh shit, Letty.
I can't forget that name. I drank way too much while I was there.
Yeah, I know, right? No,
she used to let us buy cases and put them behind the bar, so when the bar would close, we'd still have beer back there in the cooler.
So I came from. I was a recruiter. Myself and the guy that replaced me, his name is Su Se Chow, who's an engineer. He was part of the class. So everybody that after I left, I think two more people that the guy that replaced me ended up getting selected from the same office.
Wow.
And then the guy after him, he also got selected. But the crazy thing is that Se Chow and I were the only, I think we were like 3 or 4 out of the entire recruiting, because we were part of the San Diego MICRIC. We were like a handful of motherfuckers that could do a first class PFT. Everybody was either second or could barely fucking pay. So when I showed up over there, I was like, because I had already heard from Scott Gilman and Anthony Hill, they're like, don't be the one that shows up over there representing Motor T and be fucked up. And I was like, okay, Roger that.
Well, there were 5 of us that got selected from our MOS that year. It was the biggest class we'd ever had. I think it's the biggest class they've ever had for corrections. And I just like took stock of everybody else that was selected. It's like, okay, so these are the guys I got to be. It's like, you're tying your shoes with the bear. You're not trying to outrun the bear. You're just trying to outrun the other guy that's a turd, the slower guy. So that's what I was doing with those 5. I was looking around like, okay, who can I? And I could outrun all of them PT wise, but it was like, okay, and we had some stellar guys that were there. And then, we had a couple that they were DEI before they were DEI.
Yeah.
Like we got 5 people going in. We have to at least select 1 female,
Yeah.
There's a brown paper bag that's in her way. There's a brown paper bag in her way that she's never going to be able to get through because she couldn't lead her way around it. It's like, okay. And it's probably wet.
Yeah. Couldn't lead the way out of or fed the way out of a wet paper bag.
Yeah.
Fuck me.
Like, good God.
Dude, so I know. So as you progress through the ranks, I mean, you got to be the director of both Brigs. As I was reading your background and everything. So to finish your career, you kind of touched up on it. I mean, what was that like, bro?
It was really weird when there's one thing I always like. When I became a warrant officer, at first, when you first put those bars on, you get the feeling like you start believing your own bullshit, like, yeah, I am pretty, like, I am cool. Like, I am good.
I am the shit.
I am the shit. Right. And then after a while, like it finally clicks and you're like, dude, like if I'm at the MEF right now, I'm getting some major coffee. So, like, am I really that cool? And corrections was terrible for that because you walk on deck and they call attention on deck. All the inmates have to stand up, stand at attention. And it doesn't happen just like once in the morning, once in the afternoon. Like they call attention on deck everywhere you go in the brig. And so you get this big head and think you're like this big dude, and I didn't want to be that kind of commander when I finally got to the point where, I just wanted to be like, I don't know, you got to take a command presence and make decisions, but I never wanted to be the like, look at me, like I'm so amazing type, that type of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So being the CO where I started was kind of crazy.
I know one thing that that always stuck with me because I know in our class, some of the guys you could tell who was going to be that guy, that type of warrant officer. Like, man, I know this motherfucker's going to make a bad name for himself. I can already see it.
And a lot of them were 01s.
Yeah, and I was just like, dude. So. But I didn't want to be that motherfucker, and because the ass you chew today might be the one you kiss tomorrow.
Yes.
So
yeah,
I learned that really quick. I was like, no, I'm not gonna do that.
And what's crazy is you would think warrant officers would understand that, because coming from where we come and what we do, but we forget that shit as soon as we get to, you get to leading things and you're like, oh, I'm amazing, and then you get brought back down to size. The one thing that I did like about it, like, when you're running a brig, is all the decisions that you saw people make before you. And they, as the CO, a lot of times the CO is too worried about getting his ass chewed or his fitness report and, all that shit by the people that he's running the brig from. And I just wanted to be the guy that said, know what, that inmate needs to be pepper sprayed. Go house that fucker. Go down there with the can and spray that whole cell and make that bitch suffer until he does what we tell him to do. And, and the sad thing is the COs before me, they were too chicken shit to do it. It was like, we have pepper spray, the CO can authorize it, but we're not going to put it in everybody's hands, and on the civilian side, there's been so many lawsuits because officers didn't have pepper spray and they've been killed, and the states and, places out there have been sued and lost and paid out giant sums of money, and they're like, well, we don't trust young Marines to do that. It's like, well, shit, man, you trust a young Marine to take a rifle into a foreign country and walk down the street and not shoot and kill civilians. What do you mean you can't trust a Marine to carry pepper spray? It was just asinine. So I just didn't want to be that guy. And I made plenty of mistakes along the way.
Yeah, no shit. So I think one of the highlights and what we talked about is during the whole Afghanistan, drawdown and everything. We were talking a little bit. So you got to work to, basically Lieutenant Colonel Stuart Scheller
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so what? I mean, I know. I mean, I think we all saw it. I mean, I saw it. I saw his posts and all that shit,
Oh,
and
yeah.
then and people were saying, please, and he would repost another thing. So
Yeah.
so you ended up actually dealing with him at the Brig. I mean, what was that like, bro?
It was insane. I was begging. The command had called to ask how to lock him up, and I was begging him not to do it. Like, just please don't do this, because you have like you have two different types of officers that get locked up. One that owns their shit, and they're like, okay, I deserve to be here, and this is what's going on. And then you have those that are like they completely feel like they're being screwed over, and then they try to turn all the other inmates like, I know better than these guys. Watch me make this life miserable for them, And I didn't want that to happen, so I was begging them not to lock him up. But then I saw the last post that he had posted before he came in. As soon as that one hit, it was like on a Saturday morning or Saturday night. I was like, shit, he's coming, and it's going to happen now. There's no way around it. But when he got there, and I could tell he was pissed off. I mean, I knew he was angry. But he caused no problems for any of my staff. Like, he wasn't as compliant with the command, because it was, the command had to send somebody of the same rank. So they had to send a lieutenant colonel over with him. And we start the in processing. And when you're confining an officer, it's a good idea to have an officer there, at least to give him the in brief.
Yeah.
I stayed there through the in processing that night. And he went down, and without being told, he reported in at parade rest to the, our RHU supervisor, who was a corporal, and addressed him by his rank. Not a problem at all. And I was like, okay, I think this might be okay. At least with him. But the other part of it was a nightmare, because that after that night, my social media was attacked. I had all kinds of weird friend requests and shit. And then the phones at the facility went off the hook. We couldn't even conduct business. Everybody from, senators, congressmen, everybody calling in to, and the day we were doing the IRO hearing, somebody had called in a threat to headquarters Marine Corps and said that there were 30 armed Marines that were in the tree line making their way to the Brig to secure Scheller's release by force, and, and it came down through, from the headquarters Marine Corps down to the MCI West. And from MCI West, we got the call from them. It came down to us. And then I had to brief back up the same thing. Hey, we've got this, we'll go out. I'll send a patrol out into the tree line and see if we can see any Marines out there with guns. They brought over PMO with the SRT team to, set up a cordon around the building, and his lawyer did a really good job of creating chaos, changing the time, pushing the time back, wanting to bring senators and congressmen onto the quarterdeck. And, nobody was helping me from, I called public affairs, and it was like crickets. It's your Brig, you handle it.
I don't think anybody wanted to handle that shit show.
Oh no, I was like, God damn. And so, my Marines were on the quarter deck. They're up there with their cell phones recording, which it blatantly says up there, no recording devices, no cell phones. Senator Congressman Grommert from Texas was on the quarter deck and demanding to come in. And I called back up to PAO and said, hey, can somebody come down here? I know we've got to have a congressional affairs, liaison up there. They're like, oh, you got this. So I'm like, okay, great. And I didn't want to do anything illegal, but at the same time, I'm like, okay, I'll just go deal with it. But I picked up the phone and called a buddy of mine that was the lead, the senior SJA at Lejeune, and he was a prior enlisted guy too. And I trusted him, and I was like, hey, what should I do here? And he's like, what are your options? So I told him, and he's like, well, do whatever you want, Scott. I think you'll be okay on this one if you tell him to get lost. And I was like, okay, got it. So I went back out there and told him he couldn't come in. And then he told me that, I was a terrible person for not allowing a war hero to come into my facility. And, this guy has been over, done so many deployments for his country. And I'm like, yeah, I've got, a few more than that, but okay, whatever, dude. Say what you want to say. Cool. And then he was ticked off. I ended up giving him a tour of the facility afterwards. I just told him, you can't come in for this hearing. I'm not going to let you, the young major that was doing the hearing, I felt really sorry for him because he was a new magistrate and he had to decide whether or not he stayed or not. And they sent over, the prosecution, or not the prosecution, it's the hearing, but they sent over a pretty seasoned lawyer as a major to be the guy for the government, you know, and then he's going against a lawyer that was working for the SEAL commander that was locked up down at Miramar. Because that's who's, you know, Mr. Scheller had as his attorney, and he was good. Like, that guy was good. He created chaos. You know, so it was just a madhouse. And my Marines, I think my Marines were upset with me too. Because, you know, I brought him into the office to talk to him by myself, because I wanted to get some things. You know, I wanted to get some things across to him. I wanted him, you know, and I probably shouldn't have done it, but I turned on the news and I was like, look, like, this is what's going on. Like, can you tell your parents, like, to stop telling everybody that you're in solitary confinement, because you're not, like, you know, you're not in solitary confinement, you know. And he was really, you know, agreeable to everything. We joked, we had some, you know, he's in a tough situation too. I mean, I don't think he really realized what was going to happen in the brig. I don't think he had, you know, really wanted to, you know, obviously didn't want to be there. Would have been great if somebody would have just accepted responsibility at the top and none of that shit would have happened. But they were too chicken shit up there to do it. So, and you know, honestly, like, I was kind of, a lot of officers were on the fence when that went down, because it was like, do you say something? Should you say something, or should you do that in uniform? Should you not? You know, and you know, it turned out for the best. I think, you know, I was angry as hell that August when we just let Afghanistan go. You know, I had interpreters that had people over there, and, you know, and it was like they were calling me and I'm calling them, and I got, you know, I'm calling the MU watch officer. I'm sending emails back and forth with them, trying to get, you know, people in contact with people. And it was just asinine the way our government, you know, the way our government did that.
Yeah.
We felt betrayed.
No, I mean, you know, what was it? You know, what the fuck was all these years and everything that we did? You know, what was all that for? I mean, it just billions,
you know, like
billions of.
One of the guys from our class was the first warrant officer to die in Afghanistan, and they named the EOD camp after him.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm sitting there thinking, like, you know, the kids, we had an MP dog handler, you know, that Ashley, I mean, great people died over there doing that shit, and then our government just pissed it away. It was like, what are you, like, you know, people are like, oh, we've been over there for 20 years. I'm like, well, shit, we're still in Germany. Like, when did that happen?
Yeah, no shit.
You know,
right?
it's like, we're still in fucking Japan. Like, come on. Like, you know, it was nuts. And it's not like we're not going to have to go back over there and unfuck it, but this time it's going to be our kids.
Yeah. So now
it was just really disappointing.
Now that you're on this side of the fence, what's the contrast between, I guess, Marine Corps running things and whatever, and now it's, you know, on the civilian side as an inspector and doing all these things, man?
Well, I found that, you know, the Brigs, you know, some of the time in the military, if you don't ask questions and nobody's asking questions, things just kind of slip through the cracks, but nobody really cares because nobody's asking questions. And in the military, we wrote, you know, I really, you know, a lot of people will disagree with me on this. And I was a guy that did it, you know, out of 31 plus years, I think I spent like 25 in North Carolina, or on the, you know, between Chesapeake and, you know, living in North Carolina. And I kind of, you know, I went from unit to, I was with 3 different units, you know, multiple different times, because of going to the law enforcement battalions, but I stayed in one spot. But I think, you know, the Marine Corps should not get rid of rotations and making people move. Because I can see what happens when apathy stays in one spot and you get comfortable. Because, you know, some of the stuff you see in the state, whether it's with the, you know, the Department of Corrections, or whether it's the different counties, these people have been there for 10 to 15 years and like, well, that's the way we've always done it. I'm like, really? I mean, you just leave your master control door open with all the buttons that open up every door in the facility? Like, that's not a good idea. Well, that's the way we've done it. You know, things that are just really stupid and you just can't believe they're doing it. But it's like, okay, I see what happens when you don't have any change. There's no stress. There's no stressors. Like, everything just kind of slips through the cracks. And, you know, you say, hey, who's going to do a urinalysis for this facility? And they're like, oh, we don't do that. I'm like, well, that's funny because your policy says you do. No, it doesn't. I'm like, well, when was the last time you read your policy? You know, like, oh yeah, I guess it does. I guess it does say that. And one thing I will say, like with the military, you know, we don't have to experience the same type of inmate because there's just not as many of them, and our inmates had discipline at one point. Now,
Right.
our guys know how to, like, our inmates knew, you know, if they were going to put up a fight, they were in pretty good shape. You know, most of the inmates were, so you're going to get a good fight, where a lot of the inmates in the state and county jails aren't. But we didn't have that same type of, you know, these guys destroy everything. Like you go into, I mean, they're actively trying to tear the whole cell apart, and don't give a shit about the repercussions. So maintenance and stuff in the facilities is rough. But the other part that we didn't have, that we were spoiled in, was the HR side of it. You know, like they would ask me, like, one of the things that happens all the way across the state, it's the same way in almost all correctional facilities, is you're having a hard time getting people in to come work in the facilities because the pay's not great, and you put up with a lot of bullshit from the inmates and the staff, and there's liabilities and stuff, and you can't do certain things because of the legal aspect of it. So, you know, it's hard to get people to come in and work, and they're starting to raise salaries, you know, across the state. And when one agency does, everybody rushes to that one. And then, you know, 6 months later, somebody else increases pay, and then they all leave and go over there. But the hard part is, like, if you don't show up for work, what do they, I mean, you have sick days, holiday, you know, like they just don't show up, you know. And they would always ask me, like, well, what did you do in the Marine Corps when your Marines didn't show up? I was like, well, I put them in the cell next to that asshole. Like, what do you mean? Like the kid's coming to work, or he's getting locked the fuck up. Like, it's a different, like, we didn't have to deal with that. You know, we dealt with, like, staff shortages, but you never had to deal with, like, the people shortage of not having somebody just not coming in. Even with as bad as, you know, some of the Marines get with sick call and their medical and mental health problems. That's probably one of the other things in corrections that you see a lot of, is they're always talking about how corrections officers, and in the Marine Corps, we have a lot of washout from, you know, the mental aspect of it. You know, guys go in there and they can't handle working with inmates, or it's PTSD. And it's like, okay, hold on, man. Like, you're claiming PTSD from the Brig. Like, you joined the Marine Corps to go to combat. What do you mean you got your bitch ass has PTSD because you had to yell at an inmate? Like, come the fuck on.
Yeah.
You know, and that happens a lot in the Brig, where guys look at it, they're like, oh, if I say that, then I won't have to work 24-hour shifts. They'll take me away from working with the inmates. I'm still a Marine. I'll go home and wear all my dress blues and act like a badass when I go home. But I was a little bitch when I was at work, you know? So
let me ask you this. Looking back in your career, what would be one leadership lesson you would wish every junior Marine or young CO would understand?
You can't be somebody you're not when you're dealing with an inmate, or even with Marines. If you put on a front to try to be somebody that you're not, it's going to shine through. And that matters whether you're dealing with an inmate or you're dealing with junior Marines or your peers. If you try to pretend to be something you're not, it's going to come out, and eventually everybody's going to know, and you're just going to lose you're going to lose twice as much faith if you just were the person you are. I mean, not everybody's a perfect Marine, and not every Marine reacts to the same type of leadership. It's the same way with inmates. You know, I found that if I just talk to an inmate, for the most part, until they get stupid, you know, if you just talk to a guy, treat them like a human, they're gonna respond the same way. And then those that don't, like, they're not worth wasting your air or breath on anyway. It's kind of like, you know, if you could pick and choose, and Marines could sign a waiver to get hazed or beat or get paperwork written on them, it'd be a good thing, because I'd be like, okay, I know I can treat this guy this way. This person I'm just going to write up, and I'm going to get rid of this guy if he's a turd. The guy that I'm going to beat, I'll get that kid through, and he'll end up becoming a great Marine.
That's true.
Because I would have signed that paperwork to get beat up.
Dude, it's been good bullshitting with you and catching up, dog.
I don't think I dimed too many people out across it. I was worried about, you know, when you put that I was running the Department of Corrections. I know there's a couple of guys that are my Marines that are working in the same Department of Corrections that were also corrections guys with me. And I was like, man, they're going to give me a ration of shit. And then I was like, oh man, I better watch what I say about, you know, legally, because, you know, I got to go talk in court a lot of times about some of the inspection stuff we do. So it was good. I didn't have to name any county jails or anything that are
no.
questionable.
I try to keep it, you know, because I've had a lot of guests who are on active duty and stuff. So obviously, I try to keep. I'm very conscious. I'm very conscious of that because.
Oh man, I was terrible when I was on active duty with social media. I mean, somebody would ask me. They always ask me like, "Well, what are your political views?" I'm like, "Dude, you don't watch my Facebook or my Instagram." And then I'd have somebody post on there like, that's the president of the United States, and I'm like, "Yeah, okay, got it, bro. Yeah." Like, I'm going to say what I want to say anyway. You can charge me if you want. I really don't give a shit. Like, I've done enough time in the brig to know I'm not like, I'll go with the flow, whatever.
Yeah. Oh, shit. Well, shit, man. Hey, thanks so much for your service. Thanks so much.
Shit, brother.
It was a very, very good, entertaining conversation. We got through a little bit of the technical issues, but we'll make it happen, bro. Where can people find you on social media?
Oh shit! You're gonna have to send me a friend request because it's not open to everybody. Facebook. I'm just Scott Bolman on Facebook, and the same thing on Instagram. I think it might be Fatty B on Instagram. I'm not sure. That was my call sign in Iraq was Fat Bastard. So, but yeah, it's my game tag on PlayStation too. Is Fat Bastard. So or Fatty B. So if you're on PlayStation and want to screw around on games, it's Fatty B or Cage Kicker.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, bro. Well, hey, thanks so much for your service. Thanks so much for your time.
It's awesome talking with you.
Definitely talk some more bullshit next.
Yeah, for sure. And I haven't had a drink yet, so I'm probably going to go downstairs and have a drink now. I wanted to make sure I wasn't as loose-lipped as I needed to be before I came on.
Hey, loose lips sing ships.
Damn straight, bro.
I'll talk
no
to
jail
you
time. All right, brother.
Hey, everybody, that was Scotty B in the house. Hey, amazing individual, a lot of great stories. By the way, he and I had a couple of we had a sidebar today and the other day. I mean, there's a lot of other shit that we touched on. Obviously, we got to keep it somewhat vanilla, to protect other people's privacy and all that good stuff. But at the end of the day, that's what we do as Marines. So, even though it could be a couple of years have gone by, it's like never, like time hasn't gone by at all. And that's the same thing that happens when you even meet somebody for the first time ever. They're like, oh, shit, you walked in the same boots I did. Awesome. We're brothers. We're sisters. So, hey, look, with that being said, if you are having issues, if you've been ruminating, having thoughts that, you feel yourself like you're going down that deep, dark hole that you can't get out, do me a favor. Instead of committing suicide or even contemplating about it, reach out to us on the show. There's the suicide hotline. There's the VA hotline. There's military one-source Striker and everything else. Just hit somebody up and at least have a conversation. Don't do something that obviously there's no coming back, and that you leave the rest of us with the bag asking the questions why and what could we have done to prevent this from happening. We also I just found out yesterday that an amazing individual that I served with, big, kind, giant, fellow 3510, passed away. Dave Arnold, he was a sheriff out in Oceanside. He was a fellow 3510. When I first pinned on, the guy mentored me. The guy was great. So our condolences go out to the families as well. And for those of you, and not to get kind of on that as well, but if you grew up, we had some amazing, not amazing. We had some losses this week as well. Those of you who, Ozzy Osbourne. I grew up with this guy, listened to the music as well. Malcolm Jawan, Theo from the Huxtables also passed away, and Chuck Mangione and Hulk Hogan. These are people who we grew up watching, and we all can relate. So. Our love and prayers go out to that family and to Dave Arnold, hey brother, Semper Fi, wherever you are. So I think this is a good place to end it. So with that being said, everybody, Aistamas, Daisuki, I'll see you next week. Yeah, hoorah, get some.